Welcome to Sovereign Conversations, where we explore how to attain greater inner freedom, greater awareness, greater courage, and boldness to show up as our most authentic selves. Today, I'm joined by two really special guests and personal friends. One is Jennifer J., who started her journey as an educator in public schools, but then expanded her passion for health and well-being by becoming a coach as well as a yoga teacher, yoga studio owner, entrepreneur who teaches Kundalini yoga. She's absolutely amazing, full of humor, full of kindness, and full of empowerment. And joining us is Kasim Outlaw, a dedicated health and wellness educator whose journey started with a YouTube search on how to reduce stress for his students. And what that turned into was a lifelong journey of yoga and meditation, both as a personal practice and as an instructor. He has been Teacher of the Year for many years in a row in his school due to his passion. He has a master's degree in integrative health, is a trained yoga instructor, has trained with many great teachers, and he shows up with so much to share with us about sovereignty. So let's get started.
Once I started to step into my own sovereignty, if you will, I noticed that there were untold amounts of people that jumped on the bandwagon and were like, what? You said exactly what I want to say. If I had a different situation, I would say that. I commend you for doing that. I wasn't looking for any kind of notoriety or any kind of fame or anything. I was just speaking my truth.
Our sovereign path, it's a journey. And I'm on that journey, and I always say, I don't have it all figured out at all times. There's days that I'm more in my warrior spirit, and other times I'm scrambling.
Kasim and Jen, two of my favorite yogis and sovereign beings, and you have so much, just your presence, your teachings are so powerful, and you always brighten up my day, and you always, really truly embody that sovereignty that I wish for the world. So, I'll start with you, Kasim.
Yeah.
We met at a conference a while back, and I just remember your bright, shining spirit. Just, really the charisma you had in the room, and especially like the joy that you exuded.
Yeah.
And then a couple years later, during the pandemic, I saw that you were, a teacher, a local teacher who was no longer allowed to continue their job because of not feeling comfortable complying with the mandates that were given. And, there were a lot of articles about you because it was so sort of shocking, I think, to people. Wow, like somebody's not, somebody's doing what they want to do. And what was super interesting was that in the news, in the videos that I saw in the news and so forth, the interviews with you, you were so composed, and you spoke so beautifully. And I think it made all of us just really go, wow, like you were just showing up for those, with so much dignity and so much depth and compassion and respect for others, respect for yourself. And then I remember us meeting in person with our families. And just when you walked up to me, when we greeted each other, I felt so much sovereignty exuding from you. It was almost like this lion energy of just power, but in this also very compassionate. You have that combination of this compassion and like this deep self-respect and respect for others. And then you've written this beautiful children's book.
Yes.
That is all about this idea of like self-love, a love of others. And so I just want to hear from you, what your story is and how you sort of developed your sovereignty.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I feel like it's been something that's been with me my entire life. It's not something that I ever had to really think too much about, which feels kind of good, and I feel blessed because of that. And I must say, as I've read through your book, Sovereign, a lot of the language and a lot of the phrases and a lot of the stories that you told just reminded me of a personal experience. Some of the descriptions that you had are of people who I aspire to be like. And then when I reflect on some of the experiences in my own life, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm kind of doing that same thing. So I aim to be a star, like the person that lights up the room, the person that brings a sense of ease and peace into what may be a chaotic situation, what may be a situation without any energy, any joy. So I try to just embody that. And I think during the pandemic, it was very evident to me that there were a lot of people close to me and people that I never met that were downtrodden, that were feeling beat up, that were feeling alone, that felt like they didn't have a voice. And I'm not saying I was trying to speak for those people during that particular time, but once I started to step into my own sovereignty, if you will, I noticed that there were untold amounts of people that, jumped on the bandwagon and were like, you know what, you said exactly what I want to say. If I had a different situation, I would say that. I commend you for doing that. So it really put me in a strange position. I wasn't looking for any kind of notoriety or any kind of fame or anything. I was just speaking my truth. And I knew that there were a lot of children looking at me in that situation, those that I've taught, those that I haven't taught, my own son, relatives, family members. So I wanted to show them what it looks like when someone has integrity, whether it be right or wrong. I wasn't putting a label on it like that. I just was speaking from my heart. And it got me to a much better place. During the time it was challenging. There were some trials and there were some uncertainties, but I always felt like I was protected and that I was being guided to something greater. And I can say that, 5-6 years later, however long it's been, I do feel like I'm in a better place in all facets of my life. So I'm blessed.
I love that, this idea of I'm just speaking my truth. And I didn't mention this earlier, but you were Teacher of the Year for so many years, and it must have been so hard for you to also step away from all those students that you support, and that you teach well-being to.
Yeah, it was definitely tough.
Aligning with yourself and speaking your truth, and now you're back with the students.
I am a different demographic, different set of students, but nonetheless, there are children in front of me that need to be inspired and need to be shown how to live a healthy and happy life, and I'm more than willing to take on that task.
I love that, Kasim. And Jen and I met at the Kundalini Yoga Studio in Madison. Such a beautiful teacher you are, and I know you had you were single mom of three, and then had a different profession, and then one day you were sitting on a park bench in Madison, and you had this sort of revelation that came to you, and you decided to follow through it. It sort of came as an intuition. Yeah, you want to share a little bit of your story, and then anything you want about sovereignty and how you've learned it, because you're just such a powerful teacher of sovereignty.
Thank you. And thank you for holding this sovereign space too, and writing a book. And as we were saying before we hit the record, I was like, sovereignty is such a huge topic. There's so many ways to come at sovereignty. And Kasim, I love how you even said it's not always easy. No. We know when there's something like here that we have to listen to, and I sometimes say it's like an assaulting of the soul if you don't listen, but it's not always easy. It's not always easy to walk it. So I always bow to you and those who walk it. And so I was a classroom teacher prior to becoming a yoga teacher, yoga studio owner. And I was a classroom teacher for, I'm not even sure, I was in San Diego for a good 10 years. And for me, I think even part of my sovereignty was it was very difficult for me to teach in the public school systems. I felt very squashed in how I wanted to teach. And so over time, I just was like, I don't think this is for me, because I didn't feel like I could do the things I really knew I needed to do in the ways that I wanted to do them. And so one thing led to another in my life. At that point, as I said, I was living in San Diego. I ended up in Madison, Connecticut. Along the way, yoga has always been a place where I could find my sovereignty, where I felt like I'm home. And one day I fell upon very haphazardly Kundalini yoga, which elevated everything I thought yoga to be. And so I went deeper into the studies of Kundalini yoga. And as you were saying, one day, that sitting on the Madison, it was sitting in my car in Madison, the way my life was unfolding is a yoga studio had come into into vision for me. Literally, someone called me up and said, "Hey, I know you teach yoga. Would you like to open up a yoga studio? I have one for sale." And I was like, I don't want to be a business owner. Like, and I had 3 young children at the time, and I remember sitting there being like, should I do this? And this booming voice came in and said, "If not you, then who?" And it was just this knowing that, like, I have to bring this forward. And that Madison is it's a very small town, a very how would I say this? How would you explain Madison? You live in Madison. it's
Well, it's a privileged town that may not always have access to open-mindedness, perhaps, or spirituality.
Spirituality, open-mindedness, and I feel, yeah. So Kundalini is, sometimes it's called the weird yoga. We do a lot of mantra. We breathe in interesting ways. So it could look a little weird for someone who has this concept of what yoga is. So in my mind, I'm like, why Madison? Why Madison, Connecticut? And as I'm 5-6 years into having the studio in Madison, Connecticut, I understand why now. I mean, it was a hard thing to do. I always say, when Spirit's delivering to us what to do, it doesn't necessarily tell us all the little details, because if we knew the details, we wouldn't do it. We'd be like, I'm good. Yeah. I'm not doing it. Right? But I understand. And in lieu of this conversation, it was to help more people find their sovereignty. That's so much of what Kundalini does. It's walking that authentic path and staying true to self and soul.
So how about for you on a personal level? Like, has that look, that journey towards greater sovereignty?
On a personal level, well, like I said, there's this part of me, sort of like what Kahseim said, is I think my whole life I've always, like, if something like assaulted my soul, I'm like, I can't do that. Sometimes you have to do it, from a young age. But I would say I've definitely developed an enormous amount of confidence in saying yes to the things that light me up, and no to the, gracefully and lovingly, no to the things that don't. Yeah. So, I think, it's given me a lot of confidence in self. I have 3 children, ages, how old are they now? 13, 15, and 17. And I see them, just walking very confidently through their teenage years, through those, those awkward years. So I feel like, they really hear how I live, see how I live. And I don't think, if I didn't have a practice like this, I don't know how they would turn out, but I do see that the practice has become a backbone for them.
Yeah. Having a practice that helps you stay really true to you and in touch with your own values and your being. And Kasim, you also have been doing yoga and meditation for many years. And would you say that's contributed to your sovereignty?
Absolutely. Without a personal practice, you're just kind of like, I don't know, tripping through life without any real... For me, I've always been a disciplined person, and when I stepped into a personal practice of yoga, that kind of took over. I treated it kind of like a challenge, and it was only until I softened up a bit and allowed the yoga to take hold of me, as opposed to me taking hold of the practice, and allow it to integrate in all areas of my life. Then, like Jen was saying, you can become like this reference point or this bookmark for your children or anybody around you on how to live. I mean, you have to live yoga. You can't just do yoga. You have to be it. And I think when you start to find success is when you look around you and notice the influence you're having, whether it's being more peaceful, being calm, being centered, being giving, being loving, being patient. All of these things I think are natural for us, but when we're caught up in the rat race and we don't have this I don't want to call it a form of escape, because it can be used as that in some aspects, but almost you got to return home. And not just to a physical place, but every morning or every night or whenever your practice finds itself, you have to return to that. And it's just a beautiful thing.
I love that. Yes, it's about returning home. That's how it feels to me too, right? When I'm meditating, it's like, okay, my mind is pulling out of the matrix of, not just the matrix of the world and the stories, but the matrix of my own mind, the matrix of my own thoughts, of my own stories, of my own emotions, and just going a layer deeper, where it's just I'm not caught up in the web in that moment. And so it's like you said, a reference point. It's kind of like sometimes, I don't know if you have this, but when I wake up in the morning, sometimes I'm in that in-between space and there's complete blankness and peace where the thoughts haven't woken up yet, and just like, this is it, and then here I go. And then, I can go back into that web. And then the meditation, I'll come back out. But that helps. Anyways, I as you're talking, I'm thinking of that. And also just noticing, you both are teachers, but you're both teachers in your classrooms, but you're also teachers just in the way that you walk around the world and influence the people around you. Yeah. So I'd love to hear from both of you about this idea of just, how do you teach sovereignty? I mean, I know I wrote a book and this podcast, and I'm trying to get the word out for people to feel more aligned with who they really are so they can shine as themselves, because we need people to be themselves and to be able to shine as themselves. The planet needs that so much right now. And so I'd love, what your thoughts are for how you would teach or encourage people or listeners, into how to tap into their sovereignty.
Go ahead, Jen. Did you want to jump on it?
I'll jump in.
Okay.
So we'll see how this banter goes.
There we go.
So, in Kundalini, so I'll, put it from this framework of how I would simply teach it, whether that would be someone who'd walk in and want to take a class, or I'm just sitting down with someone. As I said earlier, in Kundalini, we use a lot of mantra because our minds are always vibrating something. And so if we can put in a mantra, like a high vibrational sound or frequency in, that sort of helps to stop that chatter. And so there's many mantras we use in Kundalini, but a bij mantra, a seed mantra, is Sat Nam, as you know. Like, I'm going to inhale Sat, exhale Nam. And Sat means truth and Nam means name. And so it's, as you have that mantra going on the background, it might just start in yoga class, but for me, it's in everything I'm doing. I mean, I've been inhaling Sat, exhaling Nam for years now. It's sort of, the background of what's happening. Not all the time, but, I try and bring it back in. And so what that's... I say it this way, as far as being sovereign, if you're vibrating, truth is my name. And by the way, what does truth is my name mean? It means that I'm not Jennifer, I'm not Jai, I'm not a yoga teacher, I'm not a mom. I mean, these are roles that I'm playing, but I'm not my emotions. I'm something that's much more infinite. I'm pure energy, I'm pure light, I'm pure wisdom, I'm pure beauty. I mean, this is who we all truly are. And to really be tapped into that is what sovereign is. And that's why I love your book, because it's like, how do we get there? There's so many blurs that get in our purview. Like, how do we clear that? And so, like, at some point in my yogic practice, my life began to fall apart in every aspect of it, like my relationship, my before I had this career, like another career, my home life. I mean, it was like on every front I was being brought to my knees. And I remember thinking, like, I'm doing the good work in the world. Like, why is everything falling apart? And it took me time to realize, I'm like, it's because I'm vibrating Sat Nam. And so as I'm vibrating Sat Nam all the time, anything that is not in that alignment on that path of truth has to fall away. And, it took me time to keep moving down the path, but I realized the relationship I was in was really not fully aligned with who and what I am. It was a great person, this and that, but I was compromising myself, and probably vice versa. Same with my job and all these things that were falling apart. And as things have been building back over the last, 5-10 years, it's really building a life that it's even beyond my wildest dreams. So I would say it, like, one of the ways I would explain it is, Sat Nam, like, truth is your name, truth is your name, truth is your name, and vibrating that and aligning with that. It will naturally align to you.
Yeah, as you were saying that, I had this image of vibration, right? So this reverberation of the affirmation Sat Nam, the mantra over and over again. Imagine that sped up to the point where it becomes this vibration of who you are. And it's going to break loose or shake loose anything that's on you or within you that isn't you. And that's going to fall apart, whether that's your life, your career, your relationships. But what you're going to find is that underneath all of that, all of those layers, is something much more beautiful and much more fruitful. It's funny, I thought of this image. I had this image of, like, an animal. I think of my dog. I love my puppy, right? And when she gets wet, her instinct is not to like look around and pick things apart logically. It's just to shake and then get rid of it. And it's kind of like what we're doing when we vibrate differently is we're shaking loose anything that's not us, and then coming back to this realization like this is me right in here. So. But yeah, I mean, to speak of, I'm sorry, but to speak of the sovereign point and how to teach it, I think it's less of a head heavy logical thing to do and more of just how you live. Now, that sounds like an easy escape from the question, but there's so many different practices. And Emma and Jen, I know you're well aware of the many different modalities that we can use to help shape our life differently when we find ourselves in a rut or we find ourselves in certain challenges. But Sadhguru, my guru, always says the greatest insight into someone's teaching is looking at the way he lives. So if you want to find a teacher, you want to find a guru, you want to find somebody to aspire to be like, just look at them, just observe them, just like our children do. My son he might learn some lessons from me that I tell him specifically, but when I look at him on his own, I see him acting in certain ways. I'm like, where did he pick that up? I'm like, oh, that's how I act. So that's how he's going to act. And if you can do that lovingly, like, wow, now that's the icing on the cake. So now there's no discipline, there's no reprimanding, there's nothing needed because the frame of reference is just something, beautiful.
Yes.
Yes. And I love that you said that it's not an intellectual pursuit. And, I think that's one of the biggest things we all have to break from. Like, we're trying to think our way into, like, what is sovereign or what am I supposed to be or whatever it is, when it's not that at all. It's like dropping into the heart, or, into the body, into feeling, and I'm a good feeler.
Yeah.
I'm actually not a good intellectual.
And honoring, right? Honoring the self in a society that has taught the opposite. It's like for example, the go mentality that people are living in is kind of that inner slave driver, and it's like normal. It's like, oh well, everybody's doing it, so it's like everybody drinks coffee, so I guess that's normal. Like everybody's like pushing themselves and to the max abusively kind of, and I guess that's normal. I guess that's what I have to do,
And you sort of alluded to this at different times in your book because you've lived in different countries. So it's like what's normal here is not normal in Paris or, in my brother lives in Switzerland or, so it's what is that normal, And
Yes,
yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, and what I love about the path of yoga is just that you're honoring yourself. And in so doing, you become a blessing and a leader to others without even trying to do that, right? There's so many people, I teach leadership at Yale, and so many people trying to become good leaders. And one of the things I keep coming back to is meditate. Like, take care of your mind, of your emotions, of your healing. Then you will naturally be a leader, like you're both saying, like just naturally embody that without trying. Or like, Kasim, like your son is noticing, but not just your son, other people who encounter your fellow teachers, like, and Jen the same, right? Your students who are coming, they're like, wow, she's got something, he's got something, what does he have?
Yeah.
What they're seeing is your relationship also with yourself that helps you shine so bright.
Yeah. And that was a great part of your book when you mentioned sovereign relationships, and that it all comes back to the relationship with yourself, because it's the first relationship and the last relationship you're going to have, and it's going to carry you through all others. So when you're alone, you're in good company, that's a great thing. And if you like being with yourself, then you're naturally going to enjoy the add-on of other people in your life.
So true.
Yeah,
How has that shaped your
relationship informs all the others.
Yeah.
All the others for sure.
Yeah. How has that, have you both seen that in your relationships?
Well, so I just had a little funny experience today, not necessarily in my relationship, but I met someone who was a stranger. I'm a realtor, right? Someone I had never met before. And we just kept talking, and I'm kind of like, I gotta go, I got things to do. But she said, she goes, I just want, and she wasn't feeling really, she must have not been feeling well. She goes, I just feel like I want to lay my head and just have you hold me, And so again, I think it's like how we show up in the world, and like how in this the lineage of yoga that I study in, it truly is like power is not in how much money we have, what our bank account looks like, any of that stuff. Like power is how you make the person feel that you're in space with. Are you uplifting them just in your presence, not saying a word?
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know if that's anything I'm consciously trying to do, but I believe my yogic practice emanates that. Yeah.
It's naturally happening.
Yeah. I think it's important to set the intention early in the day if you can. Like, if you can think of anything and anything you want to give to the world, let it be joy, let it be ease, let it be peace. And if you leave the house with that, and that's kind of in the back of your mind, you don't have to force it. You don't have to try to do it. You've already kind of set that bar, and you're like, okay, I put that on the shelf, it's there. And when you have these different challenges or responsibilities, if you will, throughout the day, it always leads you back to that, right? So whatever you are dealing with mentally or emotionally, it has this underlying anchor of, I'm still trying to give my best to the world. Even when I'm feeling beat up, even, you want to honor yourself, obviously, and your needs. But when you're with other people in relationship with them, I give you a perfect example. When I step into the school building, I never know what I'm going to encounter. So, for instance, today, first thing I walk into the building, there's a fight right out in front of my room, and I have to deal with that. And there's teachers who are losing their cool, and people are yelling, and they're frantic. But in the midst of that, can you crack a joke to a kid that's standing next to you? Can you get someone out of harm's way? Can you, stop people from harming each other? So it's multifaceted, right? And then in that next moment, I have to be able to shut the door and then say, all right, kids, our objective for today is, X, Y, and Z. So being able to shift and not be bogged down by the things that are around you is key. I think that's really a big point of being sovereign is having this awareness. You mentioned this multiple times in the book, awareness of everything that's around you, but not an attachment to it. And not allowing it to stick to you like a barnacle, right, and weigh you down. You have to be able to go back to that morning intention of bringing light, bringing joy, bringing peace into the world, and continue with that work, and not let the world kind of take that away from you.
I love that.
And that yogic perspective again, it's neutral mind. Like I come from the Kundalini lineage. There's so much practice of that neutral mind, and neutrality really just brings you into. I'm just the witness here. When Kasim walks in, that fight happening. He's just the witness here. So he's not coming at it. And another way I sometimes explain this to people too is, when our life force is plugged into source, that's sovereign. That's sovereign right there. But when we have our life force plugged into, even our partners, even if they are the most like amazing human beings, if our life force is fully plugged into them, something happens to them, we're done for. It's going to be very painful. You see what I'm saying? Or whatever we plug our life force in. Oh, like if I get this raise or if I get this whatever, So it's, we do live in this world, but we want to have this level of neutrality that we're just the witness here. We're just the witness here. And I get that that's easier said than done, but that's the practice. And I always say that's why we practice.
Yes.
To get a little level of mastery there.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, within your relationships being like tethered to someone or plugged into someone, because there was a couple of situations that my wife and I were going through, nothing earth-shattering, but they were interesting because they brought up some feelings within me that I had expressed to her. But she can always tell when something is up because I try not to burden her with my emotions. That's something that I feel is a responsible thing to do. I don't know where I picked that up. Thanks, Dad. But I have to be honest with her about how I feel and allow her to help me feel better about the situation. And as we're going through this and I'm having these realizations, I'm reading your chapter on sovereign relationships and about not being a victim and about having this solid relationship with yourself that's open and honest, so that way you can then transfer that to someone that you love. And that was really powerful for me. I had to stop reading at some points and put the book down and reflect and talk to her and then come back. It took me quite a while to go through that specific chapter, but it was like divine timing.
Oh, I'm glad to hear it. I think that's, hard for all of us. There's always, relationships are such a pivotal place where we are confronted with our fears, our beliefs, our identifications, whatever it is.
And that's what makes them hard, but that's what also makes them potent vehicles for
learning.
learning,
Yeah.
for learning and honoring self, honoring other. And, so many of the things you said, like that self-awareness piece, Jen, of just, can I be aware and not engrossed, but aware? And then the other aspect of uplifting others. I mean, there's research, right, that shows if you uplift another, it uplifts you. Because when you uplift another, you're energizing them, and in turn it energizes you. This is research they've done across companies with loads of people, and just seeing, oh, what is happening in some sections that are super productive. It's these leaders that are able to uplift others, and it leads to all of this productivity, happiness, well-being, financial success. But at the same time, the leader generates more energy within themselves. And I just feel like that's one of the best kept secrets out there. If people just knew, wow, if I go out there and make the world a better place and make the joke, like Kasim, make the joke, help the person through the day, do the gesture of kindness, then it uplifts me. But also in turn, the research shows that whoever was helped or observes you helping, they go out and are more likely to do it up to 3 degrees of separation. So literally, that boy who you got out of harm's way, they may do something similar for their, teacher, and that teacher might do the same thing for their partner. I mean, people you don't even know. I always just think, wow, like we think we're this one person, but we can have this huge ripple effect that we don't even realize.
Yeah, the interconnectedness, which I hope is what we're learning, with more sovereign conversations. So, when I sometimes think, like, I think I said earlier, like, sovereign is being connected to source, like realizing I'm co-creating here, but it's like one of the things I was thinking too. It's being able to bring my mission through. Like I think we all have a mission here, and we in our interconnectedness. So just follow with me for a moment here. But it's if I can bring my mission, because I'm not assaulting my soul. I guess maybe another way in like yogic terms would say our dharma, our destiny, our dharma, to bring it through. Like we all are interconnected. We all need each other. I can't stand alone here. What I do obviously affects everybody in one way or another. So yeah, I think it's just seeing that co-creative relationship, and that we need each other. I don't think I'm saying it quite right, but
Yeah, I see the web of interconnectivity is definitely there, and the power of influence and things being contagious. There's this idea that positivity can't be helpful. It's bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and people are living in la la land when you're talking about things other than what the mass media feeds you or what society feeds you. But if you look at it, if you think about the mass amount of people who are watching the same content, and then you go to work or you're at the office and everybody's talking about the same thing because they were all watching the same thing. But if we provide a different narrative, a different story, a different perspective, then that too can be equally contagious. It was said to me before too that when 80% of the world is doing well, then the 20% is what we hyper focus on, and vice versa would be the flip side of the coin. So I mean, it's a delicate balance, I guess, of awareness and optimism or realism, which is what I more like to look at things with. But you have to believe and hope that things can be better, and when you're an agent of change and you're working towards that, it makes it so much more possible.
I love that. Research shows there's 3 times more positive things that happen to us every day than negative. But of course, where does our focus go?
Yeah.
To the negative, which brings us down, and then we bring others down. So it's just this awareness. And yeah, I love what you just shared. That's beautiful. Kasim, do you want to share a little bit about why you wrote your book and
Sure,
what it's
sure.
about?
It's funny. I mean, I'll run through the
And the
quick.
title, I forget the title.
It's called "We Are Enough."
We Are Enough.
It's
Yeah.
visible here. It's kind of light in the background, but so back in 2014, 2012 to 2014 is when I really started to look inward, and I was just kind of haphazardly looking around for meditations and different skill sets that would help my students, help me in the classroom to navigate some certain things. And then I quickly found myself going down the yoga rabbit hole, and I did a couple of retreats, I did a couple of programs, and I found a personal practice that helped guide me to where I am today. And along the way, I did some other things, a mindfulness-based stress reduction course. I got my master's degree in integrative health and healing. I did my 200-hour yoga teacher training, kind of all in this condensed period of time. So I was just overloading myself with consciousness, spirituality, positivity, love. And it really kind of cracked me open and made me susceptible to a lot of wonderful things. And during that time, during the mindfulness-based stress reduction course, every day we would meet, we would go over this, or we would practice this mantra meditation. And it was all about being enough. You know, what I have is enough, what I do is enough, and what I am is enough. And I started to use this with different students, different bodies of professionals. I was even down at Yale in the NICU. And the nurses that were down there, there was about 30 of us in the room, and we did this meditation together before I had formally did anything to it. And there were people in there crying in the middle of the day. And I said, wow, this is really powerful. And then I did it with students, and I did it with an elderly population, and I had the same kind of result. So I said, let me sit down and put my own personal little twist on this. And it took me about 15 minutes, and I created this script. And after I read through it, I said, wow, this feels like something that should be published. It feels like a book. And because of the shortness of the book and the words that I used, it kind of lent itself to children. And I've been working with children for 25 plus years. So I said, let me try this. So I called up a former student of mine who was an illustrator. She just got her degree from Dartmouth. And I asked her about this project, and she goes, yeah, I'm on board. So a couple years later, we ended up coming up with this beautifully illustrated meditation, if you will, illustrated meditation that is geared towards children, but I think it's very well received by people of all ages. I say children from ages 0 to 99. It's all about recognizing that we have everything that we need, whether we are quote unquote alone or we're in a crowd of people. Like, we're all enough. What we do, you know, we can't be too hard on ourselves. We can't be so judgmental and critical, because that's a downward spiral of energy. We don't want to go down that path. What we have, I mean, even if we think we have nothing, we still have the air in our lungs. We still have the life blood in us, and we can still create a more positive world and a more loving world. And then what we are in our essence, as Jen was saying, is not these responsibilities, these attachments, these identities, not even our name that our parents gave us. It's something much deeper. It's this point of attention, this what seems like a finite point of attention in an infinite span of consciousness that's here right now, and blessed to be together. Like, I'm blessed to be here with you two wonderful women. I'm blessed to be in this magnificent family that I have. I'm blessed to work with the 1,000 students that I see every single morning that may not have someone like me to talk to them about these things. So it's this acknowledgement that I wanted to get through in these pages of this book. And I'm just very happy that I was able to get it out into the world.
And I love that, you know, gratitude is regenerative. You know, positivity is regenerative. Like, and I congratulations on your book. Is it a newer book, or is it?
I published it in 22, so it's a couple years.
22.
Yeah.
I'll have to check it out, but congratulations on that. And I just, you know, this thing is like, we are enough. Like, to me, that has a weave into how we can better understand sovereignty, because we are enough. Like, and that's it. When people come into my class, and, you know, we, like in Kundalini, I do this because we move and breathe systematically, and then we pull the energy up, like with a root lock. And a lot of times people, the same thing, if it's their first time, or sometimes not, like there's this big release and sometimes a crying, because they're like, that they feel themselves for the first time and realize that they are enough. And so, and you mentioned this time and time again throughout the book, like sovereignty is the releasing of these core beliefs and these limiting beliefs and all these things we think we're supposed to be. Like, it's the releasing of that and the remembering of who and what we are. And, you know, this can be a whole other conversation, but I believe, if I had to put it in a nutshell, like, we arrive on this planet and like amnesia kicks in because of the toxicity on the planet, you know. And I do believe, like, your son might be one, Emma, you know, he's such a special soul, but that do have remembrances, and we all do have some remembrances of maybe other timelines, other lifetimes, other dimensions, you know, whatever it is. But there is so much remembering and unraveling of these core beliefs. And I don't my personal belief is it's not even in this lifetime. I mean, we're unraveling persecutions from other lives that perhaps we were, about to say something or do something and we were taken out. And so here we are again, even more fear of saying the thing or doing the thing. So there's a lot of reprogramming and releasing that we're where we are right now, I feel.
Yeah.
It's so interesting, right? Because when a baby's born, of course they're enough, they're more than enough. They're celebrated for being just perfect, right? What happens over the course of a lifetime, that's, come 10, 12, 13, 14, whatever, 50, 60, 70 years old, people still feel that they're not enough. In fact, 80% of millennials endorse the idea I'm not enough with regards to almost every aspect of their life, which is so sad when you think of it, and whenever I teach executives and I ask how many of you are self-critical, like 95% of the people raise their hand, or 100%, but every now and then there's one or two who don't, and inevitably, like last week I just had this one, she came up to me after, she's like, I don't feel self-critical, and I was like, yeah, I know, and you're also the most powerful person in the room, not because of her stature, but because of how she shows up. There's something that happens when you have your own back. And she shows up like a queen. Like she was kind of a leader in the room, because she's not holding herself back. She's not pushing herself down. She's right here, right there, and such a blessing for everyone else. So I think that's a really beautiful note for us to wrap up on, this idea of like, I am enough, we are enough, and knowing that can bring so much peace and also alignment with ourselves, and being okay with our thoughts, feelings, beliefs, actions, and being okay to align with our values and the way we want to show up. So that's really beautiful. Is there anything either of you would like to add? Or?
I love the fact that you said having your own back. I never really thought about it like that, but when you have your own back, you don't feel the need to search for someone else to do it for you. And then every other relationship is kind of a blessing. You don't feel the need to attach to things that don't really serve you, and you also don't feel the need to search outside yourself for more support. And Jen, you had mentioned gratitude before being regenerative. And it absolutely is. We fill up this bubble of appreciation for all the things that we have, we do, and we are, and there's very little room for anything else to sneak in and tug at our energy. So that's actually the next book that I wrote. I didn't get it published yet, but it's on its way, is all about gratitude and the power that it has. And it's funny because last Thanksgiving, I read the script to my family as a prayer before we ate. And my father, this, 6'5", stoic military fireman, big hunk of a man, is sitting there crying after I was reading it. And I think it just really touched him in a place that probably hasn't been before. Maybe it's seeing his son, speak these words. Maybe it's something a little bit deeper because he's had some trials and challenges in his life. And I think that when you show appreciation for everything in life, it's the golden ticket right there. Yeah,
that's so beautiful. I'm looking forward to first getting the first book and then knowing another one's coming.
I'll send you a copy.
And I would love it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I'll share it in my studio. And I think too, like for me, I always like to share that our sovereign path, it's a journey. And
Yes.
I'm on that journey, and I always say, I don't have it all figured out at all times, and there are self-loathing things I'm still trying to rewrite myself, and there's days that I'm more in my warrior spirit, and other times I'm scrambling. So it really is a journey, but I just love that you have this podcast and that you're making this a conversation, because the more we're conversing about our sovereign selves, and it takes, again, it unplugs us from what we think we're supposed to be doing and really plugs us back into our mission. And I when we're here in these bodies, we do come into this polarity experience, but this is sort of what I was saying before, but truly we are the one expressing itself in bodies, and that's what we come to remember, that we are the one.
I love that. I love that. So I'm gonna, we are enough. Gratitude, like even there's so much research on gratitude. I mean, it improves your health, your well-being, your sleep, your psychological well-being, your physical well-being. It improves your relationships. I mean, there's so much on that. And I always think gratitude is a lifeboat. Literally, you could be on the rocking and rolling waves. Gratitude is your lifeboat. It's your life jacket.
You know, and it's been said, an attitude of gratitude is the highest form of yoga. So there.
Yes, and that's so beautiful. And it brings you back to that alignment that you're sharing, and abundance, right? So many people who have everything. I lived in China and India, and I saw people who have nothing and are grateful for everything. And then here I saw people who had everything, grateful for nothing. I thought, who's richer? Who's actually wealthy, We forget that in a world that keeps telling us we have to look like this, buy this, do this, consume this, achieve this. It's like, oh, okay. But what if I am enough and I'm grateful for what I have, right? And then, beautiful. So thank you both so much. It's such a nice conversation, and I know the listeners are going to really, really appreciate this. So thank you.
Yes,
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.